The Pluscuamperfecto tense works very similar to the present perfect in Spanish, so if you're already familiar with the present perfect, this concept should be a breeze. For those of you who don't know the present perfect, click here to watch this 4-minute video that explains the structure, because it'll be a lot easier once you learn this first. Now let's begin with the Pluscuamperfecto. So I'll start with a simple sentence in English so you can get a feel for this tense. I had been to the beach. The key word here is had. Anytime you see a sentence with had been or had gone or any verb after had, you're going to use the pluscuam. So in this sentence, the way you say it in Spanish is yo había ido a la playa. Notice that ido is the same form as in present perfect, which would be yo he ido a la playa. So the same rule applies where you take the infinitive verb, get rid of the ending, and add ido for er and ir verbs and ado for ar verbs. So this part's the same. What's different about the pluscuam is that instead of you now have había. Now, this is only for the yo form and the el, ella, and usted form. Just like in all other tenses, the verb changes its ending depending on who the speaker of the sentence is. Here's the conjugation chart for the Pluscuamperfecto. So we've got había, habías, había, habíamos, habíais, and habían. So there's not much to memorize, just know that the base form is había, and the endings are how they usually are. Remember, these two are the same, so if you're asked to translate from Spanish to English, make sure to use context clues, and don't assume that when you see había that it's always third person singular, because it's also first person singular. The rest should be pretty obvious. Habíamos, for instance, is always in nosotros form, so if the sentence starts off with we had, then you know you're going to need to use habíamos. Likewise, habías is only for the to form, habían is only used for ellos and ustedes, etc. Okay, let's do an example. We're going to conjugate ver in el Pluscuamperfecto. Mis amigos y yo blank esa película. First, we have to figure out the speaker. Mis amigos y yo indicates first person plural, or nosotros, so we put habíamos. Now, for the main verb, remember, ver is one of those irregular verbs, so the whole taking off the ending and adding ido, that's wrong. You don't do that for ver. The correct word is visto, so make sure you know that. Here's a very common type of sentence structure that you'll probably be tested on. Cuando yo llegué a su casa, ella ya había empezado el proyecto. When I arrived at her house, she had already started the project. So this first part of the sentence is a preterite clause because the verb llegar, or to arrive, happened at a specific time in the past, right? I arrived at a certain moment in time. However, the second part is pluscuamperfecto because the subject of this clause, ella, had already started the project in the past, and this was before I entered. So a good way to think of this is, here's a graph of el pasado. If pretérito is here, present perfect takes place farther back in the past than el pretérito, and pluscuamperfecto is the farthest back. So I entered in the past, but she didn't start just then. She had already done so way back in the past, if that makes sense. So back to that example, you'll typically see a ya attached in front of the había phrase to emphasize that the action had already been done. So that commonly goes together with the pluscuam. And it always comes before the pluscuam phrase. Remember, these two are a package and nothing comes in between them. Even for reflexive verbs like levantarse, for example, the pronoun is placed before the había, so you would say me había levantado. Okay, let's do another example, and this time pause the video and try it on your own before hearing me explain. Alright, usually what I like to do with these kind of two-part sentences is to translate it into English first. He had already done his homework when you entered his room. So this sentence structure is just like the one we just did in that last example, except the order has been reversed. I could just as easily have said, cuando tú blank su cuarto, él ya blank su tarea, and it would have meant the same thing. Now, let's see. The first part has a ya in it, so that's already a clue that the hacer should be in the pluscuam. But let's be sure about this before going further. In this sentence, you entered the room, which happened at a specific point in time, and when you entered, he, the subject, had already done his homework, which had happened farther back in the past before you came and entered. Does that make sense? So the first part is pluscuam, and the second part is pretérito. So now that we know what tenses the two verbs are in, we just conjugate. In the first blank, we put había, since it's third person singular, and since hacer is irregular, hecho comes after that. Now the pretérito part is easy. The subject is tú, so entrar would be entraste. If you understood all of this material, good for you. That's just about as hard as it gets. Just make sure you memorize all 11 irregular verbs, because that's usually what trips people up, so get those down, and also remember to use the right form of había every time and make sure it corresponds with the subject of the sentence. If you're still a little confused on any of this stuff, rewind the video and watch it again, or feel free to leave a comment down below. Thanks for watching.